All right, all right, all right. Woo, 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 woo. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. That was a fabulous introduction. Thank you, Miss Williams. I'm glad. All right, so my name is Jasmine Eileen Coles. I'm an actress in New York City. I'm so excited to be here to share this story with you all today. So, okay, I love it. So, before we get started, I'm gonna ask you a question that may feel silly, but bear with me, there's a point. Put your hands up if you've seen a plane flying overhead. Okay. Now, put your hands up if you've been on a plane yourself or know someone who has. Okay, now keep your hands up. Take a minute to look around the room at how many hands are up, all right? Like almost everyone. Okay, put those hands down. Now, I want you to think about a world where I could ask that question and no one had their hands up. Like nobody. No one had seen a plane flying, no one had been on a plane or knew someone who had. That's what the world was like in 1940s. Now that's where Fly for Freedom takes place during this time period. Now the play starts around 1941, and this was a time where racial segregation and discrimination were a major part of structured American laws and life, differently than they are now, right? So my character's name is Antoinette. Can everybody say Antoinette? Antoinette. You gotta remember the name. So her name is Antoinette. Now, she is a fictional character, but she is created from several real stories from people during this time. Now, like I said, in the 1940s, there was racial segregation and discrimination differently than now. So Black aviation was a big time period where Black people said, we're gonna fight against that racism through pursuing this opportunity to become pilots. Okay? So let's look at the timeline of things. If we're thinking about this timeline, we're going from after slavery, there was the Civil War, and then there was a short time period called Reconstruction. Now, Reconstruction was a time where the government made discrimination against Black people illegal. But it only lasted for about 10 years, because after that, the presidential election of 1877 changed everything and ended that protection of Black civil rights. So then we got the Jim Crow laws. Who's heard of the Jim Crow laws before? Yes, the Jim Crow laws. Now, the Jim Crow laws discriminated against Black people and separated them from white people in every part of public life. But Black activists never stopped fighting and demanding for equality. So who here has ever had an interest in learning how to fly a plane? Just curious. Okay, that's cool. Oh, there's a lot of hands here. Okay, so if you were around in the 1940s, you would have learned with a civilian pilot training program, also known as CPTP. Now, throughout the show, you're gonna hear about CPTP. I want you to listen out for what it was, how Antoinette was involved in it, so we can talk a little bit more about it throughout the show, or after the show, excuse me. Now, who's heard of the March on Washington with Martin Luther King? Great. All right, so the March on Washington with Martin Luther King is not the March on Washington that you're gonna hear about in this show. The March on Washington movement is what you're gonna hear about in this show. It's totally different than the March on Washington with Martin Luther King, and it happened 20 years earlier. So I want you to listen out throughout the show for what that is and how it was different. And finally, you're gonna hear about the Double Victory Campaign, also known as Double V. And you'll see some images on the screen and in the film where there's a double V. I want you to listen out for what that meant, what it meant for the Black experience, and what it meant to Antoinette. And finally, in this show, you're not gonna hear anyone use words like African American or Black, because that wasn't the language that was used back then. You're gonna hear words like colored, Negro, race, or even the N-word. And we'll make sure to talk about it after the show. Let me actually go back once. So when I learned about World War II, I remember learning that it was like this great time period where the country came together. But when I really looked into what my people were dealing with, it was not the same as what I'd learned. So I want you to really listen out for what Antoinette's family and friends dealt with and how it may be similar or different from what you've learned so far about the war. Now, who's seen a Living Voices performance before? Oh, that's a lot of y'all. Great. So some of you know that I'm the only live actor here, but you will see and hear different images and voices that I'll be interacting with throughout the show. So it's kind of like watching a play and a movie at the same time. You may also see me looking above your heads a little bit or throughout different spaces in the room. Just know that I'm doing that to create the world of the story. You don't need to look at what I'm looking at. Just look at me and the screen, and you'll get the full experience. And finally, I can see you and hear you. So I'm all about sounds of affirmations. So if you're involved in the story and you want to go, what? Why? All that, do it. If you're having conversations, please save it for after so we can all talk about it. Sound good? All right. Okay. So any questions or comments about anything that I just said? Again, we'll talk more about some of the topics afterwards, but anything? All right. So we're in agreement. We're going to stay present for the full performance? Yeah. All right. Thank y'all. All right. And now I present to you Fly for Freedom. Look at that perfect sky, Vance. Oh, I can't wait to get up there.
I can't wait till I'm the pilot.
Oh, you got a couple years till they let you in the cockpit, little brother.
Are you nervous about the test?
Not about my flying, but you know.
Dunlap?
Yes, sir, that's me.
You're applying for a pilot's license?
Yes, sir.
I never seen a colored girl fly.
Oh, well, there's plenty of us. Bessie Coleman, of course, my instructor, Willa Brown, the whole Chicago Girls Flight Club.
You're not getting smart with me, are you?
No, sir. I finished ground and flight instruction at the Coffee School of Aeronautics back in June with a civilian pilot training program. Been logging flying time ever since.
She was top of all her courses and her high school graduating class, sir.
I promise you, I am more than ready to take this test.
We'll see about that. Start your pre-flight checklist.
Wings, check. Propeller, check. Controls, instruments, safety, check, check. I put my hand on the throttle, I taxi onto the runway, and then my favorite part, we're in the air.
Take us through a spin.
I spin, I spiral, I figure eight. With each maneuver, I stake my claim to the sky. There's no color to white up here, only blue. And the blue sky belongs to all of us.
Bring her down now.
I land smooth as silk, back on the ground where prejudice can hold me down like an anchor.
You did it, Antoinette.
Hush, Vance. I haven't done anything till this white man says I have.
I don't know what a colored girl's gonna do with a pilot's license, but you passed.
Mama, Pops, I got my license.
Antoinette Dunlap, don't tell me you've been flying today
Mama, I told you.
and took your brother with you.
Well, he wanted to see my flight test.
So I'll be ready when it's time to get my license.
License? You haven't even taken your first lesson yet.
Are you children out of your minds? America is under attack.
Under attack? What's she talking about, Pops?
Japan bombed our ships at Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor? Well, where's that?
It's our naval base in Hawaii.
Well, Hawaii's an ocean away. You really think the Japanese are gonna come all the way to Chicago next?
We can't be sure they won't.
The war seems so far off over in Europe, and now America's a part of it, and suddenly everything changes.
Help me put up these blackout curtains, Antoinette.
Another air raid drill tonight?
Yeah, and now Pops is the neighborhood warden. We can't have any light coming through.
Hey, Vance, could you finish helping Mama, please?
So you can go to the airfield without me?
Yes, for my first advanced lesson.
Antoinette, we don't have a girls' flight club meeting today, do we?
Nope. I'm just here preparing this part in your plane before we take her up. Oh, Miss Brown, ready to fly when you are.
Sorry, girls, but lessons are canceled.
What?
Because The civilian pilot training program is now the war training service.
So it's for men only.
I'm worried it's gonna be for whites only in a minute.
But they can't do that, can they? Not after Mr. Spencer and Mr. White flew all the way to Washington, D.C. to get the Negro schools into the program. Right?
And all my efforts to make sure we were included along with the race colleges.
But besides, the coffee school has white students too, so
Because we don't discriminate, but our government still does.
I can't imagine life without the coffee school. Without flying?
You've been set on the sky since I carried you in my arms to see Queen Bess in her air show.
You inspired me, Pops, and Vance too.
Your mom and I want you to both go into a field where you won't be bound by the limits we've put up with.
Well, no, I still think that's what aviation can be.
But I never got my chance in the CPTP.
Oh, male pilots haven't been shut out yet, Vance, and you know Miss Brown won't give up that easy.
Remember, equal opportunity is what the Double Victory campaign is all about.
Exactly. The double V means we're fighting 2 wars for freedom, and this is one of them. Like the letter in the Courier says, 1 V for victory over our enemies abroad.
And 1 for victory over our enemies here at home.
Even if those enemies are the U.S. government.
That's right. Weren't we ready to go to Washington, D.C. last summer for the March on Washington?
Until the president got so scared of 100,000 Negroes protesting that he signed the order against job discrimination so Mr. Randolph would call it off.
That executive order means we can now get hired for good defense industry jobs in Seattle.
Wait, you want us to move to Seattle?
The best of those job opportunities we fought for are in the West. Skilled work, better pay.
Wait, but what about our lives here?
Yeah, Bronzeville is home.
It's more than home, it's the center of Negro aviation.
Didn't you just say you're grounded?
Yes, but I'm still...
If you don't want to work in the shipyards with us, you can get a job in an airplane factory.
Oh, factory, but I'll never see the sky.
And what about me?
But what about you? You need to finish high school first. I'm the one
We're
trying to...
doing this for both of you until you can get back in the air.
I guess building airplanes will have to be the next best thing to flying for now.
First day on the job,
Is the look on my face that obvious?
the look and the color. Not too many of us at Boeing.
Yeah, or anywhere in Seattle, it seems. Sure is different from Chicago.
What are you staring at?
The camouflage on the top of the factory, it's like a whole neighborhood up there.
They call it Wonderland. Streets, cars, houses, all knee-high. Made
Yeah.
by some Hollywood fella.
I bet even if I buzzed it from above, I couldn't tell it's not real.
Buzzed it. What are you, a bumblebee?
Almost, actually. I'm a pilot.
Wow. I know Boeing didn't hire you to fly, Miss B.
If only. No. My name's Antoinette.
I'm Dorothy. Come on, I'll show you around. It's easy to get lost in this place.
Hey, Vance, I wish you could see the factory floor.
What are you making? Pursuit planes? Bombers?
You know I can't tell you that.
Slips, sink ships.
That's right. But it sure is impressive for someone who's never been closer to anything bigger than a Piper Cub.
Folks at the shipyard say Boeing's none too friendly toward colored workers.
Yeah, well, they did just about have their own March on Washington at Boeing to get hired there. You know that Dorothy is the first colored woman on the production line.
But they don't just have you pushing a mop.
No, Pops, I'm working wing assembly. And of course, I got my eye on the cockpit, hoping I can learn controls while I'm in there.
Dunlap, grab your tools. You're getting a new assignment.
Oh, boss, well, I can handle anything you give me. I promise.
I ain't convinced females can do this work, let alone your kind. But I don't got much choice.
Well, I actually could take a plane apart and put it back together again. You have to when you're a pilot.
Did you just say you're a pilot? Me too. Are you my new partner?
A white girl. Yeah, if the boss says so.
The boss has a pretty firm idea what a Boeing worker looks like, and we're neither of us it.
You think that since all the men are going off to war and there's a labor shortage, he'd be grateful for any worker he could get. Colored, female, or both.
Or Jewish.
Oh, you're Jewish.
That's probably why he put us together. Is that a problem?
No, not as long as my being colored isn't a problem for you, Miss,
I'm Bertie. My real name's Bertha, but everyone called me Bertie till I started flying.
Bertie? Yeah, I get it. Me, I'm more of a bumblebee.
According to aerodynamics, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly.
Exactly. But she doesn't know that, so she keeps right on flying. Huh?
Take care, Antoinette. Working so close with a white girl could go bad real fast.
Yeah, well, I think Bertie's different. Maybe it's because it's her people being persecuted by the Nazis, so.
I can't abide what the man is doing, but Hitler did get us out of the white folks' kitchens.
Mama, you know what Hitler is doing. He learned from Jim Crow here.
Colored folks know it. Most white folks don't.
Well, Bertie and I make a great team. We both mechanically minded, so they always moving us up and down the assembly line.
Wouldn't it be boring doing the same thing over and over again? Like the buckers and riveters?
Yeah, you know, we know so many different things. We could basically put together a whole B-17 ourselves.
Look out below.
Bertie, watch out.
Happiest day of my life? When Boeing lets me personally kick you out the door.
He did that on purpose.
You could have killed one of us. Why do they think this can only be a man's job?
You mean a white man's job?
They got the right idea in Detroit.
All right, Bertie, let's just keep working so they can move us to the next section.
What's going on in Detroit?
Bertie, you haven't heard about the race riots?
She hasn't, because those stories only make it into our newspapers, not theirs.
Well, look, 25,000 white Detroit workers walked off the job because 3 Negroes got promoted.
They shut down the entire Packard plant?
Mm-hmm.
But that's essential war work.
Yeah. And then race riots spread into the street. So 34 people were killed, and that's just in Detroit. It's happening all across the country.
I'd rather see Hitler win the war than work beside it.
Come on, Bertie. I don't want to start thinking about what they might do here at Boeing, so let's keep our hard hats on and our mouths shut.
If I were a man, I'd think about enlisting. Might be safer on the battlefield.
Bertie, if you're trying to find an article in your paper about all
No,
this...
look what I found instead. The Army is hiring female pilots.
Women's Air Force seeks civilian women for the Women's Air Service Pilot Program. Requirements include 150 flying hours logged and certified.
This is our chance. We're gonna fly for America.
Bertie, haven't you been listening? This might be a chance for you, but...
Now, wait a minute, Miss B. This doesn't say anything about race.
You know they don't have to say anything, but...
But what have you got to lose by applying?
All right, it'll be my own personal double B campaign.
I just don't want you to get your heart broken.
I know, Mama, but Janet got asked to interview. Maybe that's a good sign, too.
Or maybe they couldn't tell by your applications that you're colored.
Look, I spend all day at Boeing this close to planes I'll never get a chance to fly. Our country needs pilots. Why can't I be one of them?
Next interviewee, you're Antoinette Dunlop?
Yes, ma'am. Here's my logbook and credentials.
You do know WASP training is in Texas, don't you? In the South?
Yes, ma'am. I'm willing to go anywhere on this green earth if it means I can fly.
I'll have to refer your case to headquarters. You are qualified, but I've never interviewed a colored girl.
Respectfully, ma'am, we fly just the same as any other pilot.
Antoinette, I got my telegram. I'm in. Did you get yours?
Your desire to help your country is praiseworthy. Unfortunately, the U.S. government has no provisions in hiring colored women in the Women's Air Service Pilot Program.
But you have so many more flying hours than I do.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The WASPs may be civilian, but they're flying for the U.S. military, and the military is segregated.
If the Army won't integrate soldiers, they surely won't integrate female pilots.
Or make a whole separate Negro program like they do everything else.
2 whole separate armies makes no sense.
Yeah, well, unless keeping colored people down in America is more important than winning a war overseas.
Which, for most white folks, it is.
Yeah. Hey, Bertie, you understand double victory
I
now?
won't go. Not if they won't take you, too.
You can't give up your opportunity just because I don't get mine.
But you can keep reminding those Army folks that democracy means the same thing here at home as it does in the war.
I hate watching Bertie go where I can't go. Now it really does seem like I have an anchor instead of
I
wings.
guess the U.S. government told the beast she can't fly after all.
Well, the government is wrong. Who gives anyone the right to segregate the sky?
Antoinette, Miss Willa Brown on the telephone. Long distance.
Miss Brown, don't tell me the WASP turned you down too.
I didn't even bother to apply. There are other ways I could be of service. So can you?
Me? How?
You know, the Army finally approved Air Force training for race pilots.
Yes, at the Tuskegee Institute.
Tell her I'm counting down the days till I can enlist.
Hush, Vance. You know, I don't like them using male pilots as an experiment, but at least the men are getting a chance.
Well, we can make sure the experiment is a success. Half of them will get their training at the coffee school.
You did it. But what does that have to do with me?
You want to go back to Chicago on your own?
To train Negro pilots for the Army, Mama. Miss Brown thinks I'll be
As
a
long as when
natural
I sign
teacher.
up, you don't have to train me.
Ugh, Vance, I don't think the war's gonna last that long, right, Pops?
It bet not. I don't need my son going off getting himself killed.
Well, Mama, if I go, I can help some other son come back alive.
Tell them about joining Miss Brown's Civil Air Patrol Squadron.
It's the first integrated flying unit in the country. I can get in the air again.
Sounds like time to go use your wings.
Oh, the coffee school sure has changed.
Are you lost, miss?
Not at all, Cadet. Are you ready to learn to fly?
You're our instructor? But you're a girl.
I'm a pilot. And if we work together, we can make you pilots too and help win double victory for all of us. So, does anyone have any questions before we begin?
I was gonna ask what you're doing Saturday night, but...
But you thought better of it. Any questions about airplanes?
Antoinette, can you take an air patrol shift after classes today?
Ooh, towing targets for artillery training? Definitely more excited than delivering war bond drive leaflets. I'll take any excuse to get in the air.
If it isn't the coffee school's star teacher.
Janet, I don't know about that, but I sure do love helping my students learn to fly like I do.
I'm glad you still love it, because I need a co-pilot.
I thought you was joining the Army Nurse Corps.
The Army told me the quota for colored nurses is filled.
Meanwhile, they're begging white nurses to enlist.
So I'm flying to Tuskegee for commercial pilot training instead.
How'd you get enough fuel rations to make it all the way to Alabama?
My coworkers gave me all their gas coupons.
Well, Miss Brown has been wondering how her students are faring there on base.
It's settled then. Tuskegee, here we come.
Ooh, my first long distance flight. I savor every minute in the air.
Ever landed in a sunset?
Oh, seems so right to land here in a sky that's so much more than blue.
Welcome to Tuskegee Army Airfield, ladies.
Chief Anderson, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity. I can't believe you took the First Lady flying.
Her security could hardly believe it either, but Mrs. Roosevelt insisted.
Oh, wasn't it nice for Chief to arrange for us to stay on base? This dining hall is beautiful.
You two need to go to another table.
Excuse me?
White and colored don't eat together in Alabama.
My first experience in the segregated military and the segregated South. Suddenly, Tuskegee beauty is gone.
I hate to say, it's even worse off base. Try not to let it get to you.
Janet.
An Army Nurse Corps lieutenant.
Look at her uniform. Are you stationed at the hospital here?
Chief nurse. And one thing these white folks really can't stand is a Negro in uniform.
I guess we forget these earthly laws when we're
But
flying.
they haven't stopped us. Look up.
A sky full of planes piloted by Negroes in uniform.
I want you Chicago ladies to meet Mildred Carter, one of the best pilots I ever trained.
Isn't your husband overseas with the 99th? I think I've seen them on the newsreel.
Seeing someone you love on that big screen makes this war hit you in a whole new way.
Oh, I can only imagine now. I know some of the cadets, but imagining my brother?
You understand. Gino's a good pilot, but
not as good as you. Huh?
No. So I'm here packing parachutes to bring in home.
You know, for every pilot in the air, there has to be at least 10 people on the ground working for them, and most are colored
Can I
women.
put you to work too?
Oh, yes.
Drawing maps, air traffic control, take your pick.
Can I help the girls here on the pre-flight checklist?
Every morning, we check the planes, then warm them up for the cadets.
And what's wrong with this one here?
The ground crew don't know.
So they're all afraid to do a test flight.
Well, I'll do it. I take her out on a spin. At 10,000 feet, I check her out on the stalls. Then I go into recovery and the plane starts spiraling fast.
For sure, you were a goner.
Ooh. Now, when an AT-6 starts spiraling fast, you have to take the control stick and whip it like mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes? Mm-hmm. No male pilot's gonna know that trick.
Yeah, not until I teach him. Tell the ground crew that this plane needs new wings.
You can take my plane out today. Just watch for the cadets up there. They're rascals.
I'm practicing my aerobatics until a Thunderbird tries to challenge me. I roll and twist to see who can get on whose tail. And of course, I take the advantage.
Nice flying, cadet. You gave me a run for my money.
Yeah, same to you, Lieutenant.
Miss Dunlap. I wasn't expecting a girl under that helmet.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a fight with my own students, so.
You're the one who taught me those maneuvers.
Yeah, I got a couple tips for you, too, because...
Antoinette, I finally got to see you fly.
Birdie? What in the world are you doing here in Tuskegee?
They needed a wasp to deliver a Mustang here from Dallas, so I volunteered.
Ah, well, aren't you stationed in
The
what,
ferry
California?
division keeps us moving. I've got to get another plane to Delaware by nightfall.
Oh, that sounds so exciting.
Antoinette, I'm sorry. There's no reason on earth you couldn't be doing this too.
No reason but prejudice. When you see a plane flying overhead, you can't tell who's in the pilot seat. Male, female, colored. It just matters that you get the job done, and yet.
And yet, I just gave a perfect flight and still failed my commercial test.
Janet, no. Now, what'd the instructor say?
That he's never licensed a colored girl and never intends to.
They keep pushing us down, and we fight to get back up. You know, I'm tired of turning the other cheek. How are we supposed to stake our
Dear
claim
Antoinette.
in the sky?
Want to see your only brother off to the Army Air Force?
Vance, now look, you gotta remember what I taught you about being safe in the military.
Boot camp, college training, it'll be forever before I'm at Tuskegee anyway.
Yeah, well, you know I can come down there while you're there. You know the coach would put me in
A flight cadet with his big sister hanging over his shoulder.
All right.
You stick to Chicago.
Okay. Hey, Pops, how did Vance convince you and Mama?
He would have lied about his age and enlisted anyway. Vance loves his country.
Yeah, I just wish his country loved him too. It looks like we may win the war overseas and lose the one here at home.
Antoinette, you have got to come by Boeing while you're in Seattle.
What's all the excitement, Dorothy?
We're rolling out the $5,000, the 5,000 flying fortress we've built since Pearl Harbor.
Oh, the bay doors open and it looks like every swing shift worker is pushing the plane out by hand.
See how we all signed our names to it?
Oh. You know, the B-17 is now being escorted by the 99th, so Vance could fly by this plane someday, any day.
Or I could be flying in one. They're assigning me to the bomber squadron after graduation.
Lieutenant Dunlap of the 477th, I am so proud of you.
Antoinette, is your brother part of the trouble our boys are into at Freeman Field?
Vance, did you get arrested for trying to get into the officers club?
Me and 100 other airmen. Base command said that club is for instructors, but we're trainees.
Let me guess, those instructors all happen to be white.
And now they want us to sign a statement saying we agree to being segregated. I can't do it.
No, I don't blame you.
But anyone who won't sign is being accused of mutiny.
Mutiny? Mutiny means when you're trying to overthrow something. Well, they seem to use that every time we protest against prejudice.
The race sailors who survived that explosion at Port Chicago were tried for mutiny too.
And this country expects us to be patriots.
When they don't even treat us like citizens.
It seems like there's nowhere to go where this weight won't hold us down. Nowhere except up.
On the ground, they can tell us what we can and can't do, where we can and can't go.
But in the sky, there's no place to hang a sign that says no Negroes. In the sky, anything is possible.
Our unit never saw real combat, but we fought our battle at Freeman Field and won.
It takes 3 years till the war's end. But finally, The president signs an executive order to integrate the military. And the Air Force is the
President
first.
Truman, who learned about race pilots from Mr. Spencer and Mr. White way back in '39.
Yeah, and it's not full equality yet, but it's a step in the right direction, and there's going to be a lot of steps coming.
Too many Negroes came back from the war fired up to keep fighting for the home front's V for victory.
Yeah, and steps will keep you grounded. But my fight is in the air. Now, the coffee school shut down, but I'm still teaching, and what I love most is teaching flyers like you, because when I was your age, I wanted to be Bessie Coleman.
I saw you fly over where she's buried and drop flowers from your plane.
Yes, that's because Queen Bess didn't just fly for herself. She flew to inspire the race. And what did I see when I was up there?
A rainbow.
Ah, yes, a rainbow. All the colors side by side, standing together. Now, aviation is such a new field, we don't know where it's gonna take us.
Maybe the moon someday.
Maybe. But what I know is we've gotta keep on flying just like the bumblebee, no matter what anyone says. The question is, will you fly with me? 'Cause together, we can help our people soar. Okay. Okay.
Guys, we can do better than that. Let's give this young lady a And I know at this time, Antoinette is going to have, are you going to open the floor for questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna open the floor for questions. First, I wanna say thank you all for being an amazing audience. So clap for yourselves. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I do want to just check in about those 3 things I mentioned at the beginning. So we talked about civilian pilot training program, double victory, and we talked about March on Washington. Wondering if anybody's heard anything about those 3 things from the beginning, like what's double victory, what's the civilian pilot training program, and how was the March on Washington movement different from the March on Washington that we know about with MLK?
And please stand so everyone can hear you when she calls on you.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, so that's a part of it for sure. I also think the double victory piece, there were 2 fights that were happening. Do you remember hearing about the 2 fights, what those 2 fights were? So yes, there was one overseas, but there was something they were fighting here at home. You remember that piece? Racism? Yes, there we go. Yes, yeah. Excellent.
The first one was racism. The victory overseas would be basically us helping out other countries as well, like how we helped out France and they gave us a chance to fight in their war.
Yes, excellent. Yes. Awesome. Anyone else for the civilian pilot training program or the March on Washington movement, or you can comment more on double victory? Okay.
The civilian pilot training program was a program made by civilians to help train flyers or people who were really interested in flying to help in the war efforts. It was also shown to be a way to help train Negro men to learn how to fly so they could help in their fight against other countries abroad, like with France, as Karen said earlier.
Yes, absolutely, yes. So the civilian pilot training program also at first was open to people. It was open to everyone, but there was a lot of boundaries that Black people had to go through. So aviators like Willa Brown was someone in the Cornelius Coffee who wasn't necessarily in this piece, but we referenced him with the coffee school. They pushed to make sure that all the schools could get into this program, specifically Black people. Yes, thank you. March? Okay. Anyone about the March on Washington movement? Did y'all catch it? It was kind of quick, too. But March on Washington movement, how it was different from Martin Luther King March on Washington? Did y'all hear? Raise your hand if you heard about that in the show. Like you heard it. Okay, if your hand is up and you heard it, keep your hand up if you will tell me what you heard. Yes, there we go.
Okay, so in like the story, they were gonna march on Washington originally.
Yes.
And the president or whoever was in control at the time, they made a law so the Negroes could get jobs, so they decided not to march.
Yes, that's right. Excellent. So I wanna say, yes, that is correct. And I just wanna empower everyone to speak because I feel like y'all were very attentive and heard the stories and heard what was going on. And if you remember hearing during this time period and even like the civil rights, it's the youth that really has the voice. And so that doesn't change. And right now in history, y'all's voice is very, very important. So I just want to inspire you to speak because even if what you're saying is wrong or not totally right, it's not about that today. It's just about sharing what's in the room. A lot of this stuff I learned 2 weeks ago. A lot of this stuff is information I'm just coming to because our education doesn't give us all of this. So this is your opportunity to really learn about the country we stand on and what you can do moving forward and the patterns to look out for so that we can actually come together. So take this opportunity to speak, even if it's just to say, I didn't like that. I couldn't stand watching this. Like, whatever you want to say about how it made you feel. Maybe you're sitting here thinking like, none of this makes sense though. Why wouldn't a woman be able to do this? Say that. It's really important. Right now, it's just a discussion. I am not an expert. I'm just telling this story. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to the March on Washington movement.
Yes, go ahead.
Just saying that it was a buildup of all the events previously behind that, and then the big climax of Martin Luther King's march.
Yes.
Led up to it.
This time period built majorly on Rosa Parks and all of that. Really great making that connection. Thank you. Yes.
Your performance was amazing. That was a very great performance.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. I feel like y'all should give her a round of applause. And yeah, I loved it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. There can be questions or comments about other things. I know I started with the 3 things that I asked you to look out for, but it can be whatever else has come up. Yes.
I just had a comment, but I had no idea that Black women were teaching the Tuskegee Airmen. I thought that was like really cool to learn about. But yeah, that was just my comment.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, because just you saying like, I didn't know that, like, that's really cool. It just allows other people to think like, yeah, that is kind of cool. Like, oh, I thought that too. So yes, please keep sharing. Yes, over here.
Another thing I wanted to ask about, they mentioned earlier about 2 pilots who had went to Washington to make the CPTP for Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they reverse that?
Why did they reverse that?
Yeah, in the
Oh, yes. Okay. So in the are we back on the slides? I think so, yeah. Did I put that here? Okay. So this is Mr. Spencer and Mr. White, who were mentioned, who were the ones who flew all the way to Washington to make sure they could be in the program. So they reversed that because the reason they stated they reversed that was because of the war. The U.S. joined the war, so now it was urgent to get more male pilots trained. And so that became top priority. Now, just like was mentioned earlier, though, the women were still majorly involved. However, there was a really big move, just like Antoinette's family, many families at that time moved over to Seattle to get some of these big jobs that had opened up for Black people based off of the U.S. becoming part of the war. So that was the reasoning. But we know if we really start to think about that, it's like there were so many women, specifically Black women, that were available, capable, and highly skilled and able to do that. Just like in the story where Birdie was able to go become, a member of the Women's Pilots Program, but Antoinette was not, even though she had way more flying hours than Birdie did. So we know there was discrimination there. We know that that was unfair. However, it's important to keep asking those questions because there's so many answers that will come up when you look at history and the patterns around that. Great question. Yeah.
Thank you. Can we take maybe one or two more questions? And then we're going to go on into our next part of the activity for today. Are there any additional questions? We can take maybe one or two more questions.
We got two here.
Can you go a little bit more into the race riots that happened? Because I know you mentioned it in the story, but that was really the main focus. But I kind of want to hear more about that.
Yes, definitely. I also want to open it up to everyone else because, like I said, I'm not the expert in the room, and maybe other people have some more information as well. But the race riots that happened, the first one that was talked about in the show was the race riots where 25,000 white male workers in Detroit walked off the job because 3 Black men got promoted. And so that obviously stopped a lot of the war efforts because they were there in the factory to build things that were needed for the war. And so that kind of empowered a lot of people in Detroit to push back. So when Antoinette talked about 34 people being killed, there were so many race riots, and some of them looked very similar to what we were experiencing in 2020, where people were out on the streets being very vocal about the situations that were going on, the unfair treatment, and that the newspapers were not being clear with everyone about the full story. And we see that also sometimes today. But I want to open it up. Does anyone else know about the Detroit race riots? Yeah. You can just, yeah, it may not. Yes.
Do you want me to stand?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I know this story about, I think it was this Black kid and he went to a white beach and that caused a huge race riot. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so was your question more about what a race riot was, what that looked like, or was it more just about the specifics of the 34 people? Did I answer the question? A little, yeah. Yeah, you gotta keep looking. I mean, there's so much I could say. I could be talking for 30 minutes. But if you were to look up Detroit race riots, you'll get more information. And there's a really good book called Half American that talks about it extensively. Yes.
Okay, it's just a comment.
Yeah.
At the time, of the story, there was also a thing going on with Hitler.
Yes.
I noticed that it was mentioned 2 or 3 times where people would rather see Hitler win than to see the Black people succeed. I just thought that was crazy.
Yes, right? And even the connection that Hitler got what he did to Jewish people from Jim Crow. So he learned about how to implement some of the laws by looking at what was happening here. And that's also yeah. Mind-boggling, yeah, totally. Okay.
So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your participation in this first part of the activity. And let's give Ms. Antoinette a round of applause once again. Woo, 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 woo.
Thank you.